Hi, Amy.
Thank you for coming to BTN and accepting this interview.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So today we're at the event called The Liberated and Joyful Heart, How to Embody Love in a World That Needs Our Care. Do you mind to speak a little bit about this event?
Be happy to. There is at this time in the world, and certainly here in the US, a great deal of cultural anxiety. People are worried about tensions between nations, about refugees, about climate change, all of those kind of things, economic pressures and disparity. It's true here in the US, and I'm sure it's true in Korea as well. And in the Buddhist teachings, which is the root of what we're doing today, is a benefit for Insight LA, Insight Los Angeles, which is based on Buddhist teachings. The very first central teachings are the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha starts by saying there's suffering in life. Not that life is suffering, life has joy and beauty, but it also has suffering. There's causes to it: greed, hatred, ignorance, confusion, and there's an end to it. There is a possibility of freedom and joy. And so our teaching and our training today is bringing together several different teachers from different streams, Buddhist teachers, but also teachers from the yoga world and from the world of working in service with the most dispossessed people and so forth. And this beautiful man named Father Greg Boyle, who's a Catholic priest that works with kids coming out of street gangs, doing great work. All the work of compassion, the essence of our teaching is how to turn toward that which is difficult and to discover that there is a freedom that you can bring into any circumstance, in yourself and to others, so that suffering is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of what we have to tend to, and when we understand it and cultivate a steady and clear heart and mind, when we cultivate a great heart of compassion, then we can hold all of that, as the Buddha did, and say yes, this, and bring a sense of freedom and well-being and joy into the world. So the event in some way is to inspire people and remind them that this is possible, and to do some practices with them to show them how.
Would you mind to explain about how compassion and loving kindness can be cultivated through meditation?
In some of the monasteries where I practiced and trained, both in the Theravada tradition, but also in the Mahayana and in the Zen and Son tradition and so forth, there was an understanding that if you practiced mindful awareness or you practiced a huato in the correct way, that compassion and love would come naturally. And it does, but it turns out for most people that it's actually helpful to deliberately cultivate compassion and loving kindness together with awareness or with a deep inquiry. And to do so, there are a number of beautiful heart practices that have been taught for thousands of years. Practices of loving kindness, trainings in compassion, practices of joy, practices of peace and equanimity, practices of gratitude and generosity. All are the expressions of the awakened heart. Each of these can be developed or cultivated, so that if you wish to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, the training would be to quiet yourself first, to set an intention that you will do this practice to open the capacity for loving kindness and compassion. And then to begin in a very systematic and simple way to bring to mind those that you most care about first. And if you think of someone that you care about very much or who you love, you are either invited then to expand that well-being and wish them well. May they be safe and protected. May they be happy. May they have well-being of body and mind. So you do a kind of almost like an inner well-wishing and directing loving kindness toward them. Or, Amy, you can think of someone you love and care about, and then let yourself become aware of their struggles, their measure of difficulty, the suffering or pain they have in their life, as in every human life. And even now, if you think of someone that you care about, and let yourself picture with that caring heart the struggles of that person, there naturally comes a movement of compassion. Just as if you saw a child who had fallen and hurt themselves, you would somehow want to respond. It's natural in us as a human being. And then seeing this person that you care about and tuning in to their measure of struggle and difficulty, you begin to also offer the wishes of compassion. May you hold yourself in compassion. May your sorrows and struggles be released or be eased. May the causes and conditions for well-being grow for you. May you be held in courage and compassion inwardly and outwardly. And in doing so, you start to develop this sense of deep compassion for that person. Then you picture another person and another that you care about. And once you start to open the channel, then you can start to go to people you work with and people around you and people in the neighborhood and beings everywhere. And you expand from those that you're closest to, where most naturally you would feel a tenderness or love. And gradually, by practicing over and over, you start to see the beauty and the love that you have for everyone, or you start to also, if you're practicing compassion, you start to feel the compassion that's natural to us, and it grows stronger in you. These are beautiful practices, and there are texts in the Mahayana tradition as well as Theravada tradition of how to practice compassion, how to practice loving kindness, how to practice joy. They're very important for this time in our life. And sometimes when people will come to meditate, they carry too much suffering or trauma or anxiety to begin to easily start with just mindfulness practice. And they need an invitation to soften their hearts and hold themselves with kindness and their own struggle and that of people around them. And that allows the meditation somehow to be held in a place of kindness in which our whole well-being then will flower and an inner sense of well-being and freedom starts to grow. When I teach mindfulness, I like to call it loving awareness as a translation. So it brings together these two elements of awareness or attention and love and compassion. And that's really what allows the inner freedom that the Buddha taught. In the midst of all the difficulties of life, it allows that inner freedom to grow, to blossom.
Why do you think meditation is becoming so popular in America? And how do you teach meditation to those that aren't necessarily Buddhist?
Meditation, and especially mindfulness practice, has become very widespread in America. It's being used in clinics and schools and businesses in all kinds of circumstances. There are several reasons for it. The first is that there's a lot of stress and difficulty, which is not unique to the US. I'm sure in Korea it's the same. So people are looking for ways to manage and to live in a healthy way inside as well as outside. The second reason is that there has been a lot of scientific research. In the last 2 or 3 decades, there have been 6,000 research papers and studies on mindfulness and compassion training done by many friends of mine at Harvard and UCLA and Stanford and other great universities that show that the training of mindfulness and the training of compassion and loving kindness brings greater emotional steadiness and resiliency, allows us to face difficulties with greater balance, allows for deeper physical healing of all kinds of diseases and physical problems, shows ways and demonstrates ways that we can focus and have our attention become steady and clearer so that there's academic improvement. The social and emotional skills that people need to be good as children in school or in a workplace increase through the training of mindfulness and compassion. So all of these neuroscience studies then are used to show that mindfulness itself, which is a human capacity and birthright, independent of Buddhist teachings or any religious teachings, is deeply beneficial for us. And the third reason is that there are now many people who've trained in mindfulness, those who've gone to train in Buddhist countries in Asia and brought these teachings back. Many books have been written. And so it's available now, in a way, through good teachers, to train others how to do it. And that has spread very widely.
You mentioned that there's like a lot of stress around the world, especially in Korea. The younger generation, they have a lot of stress because of the entrance exams and academic, and because of that, a lot of depression and also suicide happens in Korea. Do you think you can talk about some of the way meditation can overcome depression and stress for those
Absolutely.
young children?
If it is taught well to young people, meditation can be enormously helpful with the stress you're under, whether it's exam stress or family stress or other things like it. I had a middle school group come to our center at Spirit Rock, and they spent an hour or two learning meditation. And then I got a note from a young man who was probably 13, 14 years old. And he said, when I learned meditation from you, I wasn't very interested. I just wanted to hang out with my friends. But then later I started to get into conflict with my parents, which was really difficult. And I was angry and I didn't know what to do. So I went and found a quiet place to sit and did the little meditation instruction you taught me. And my mind got quieter and I felt kinder to myself and others. And I wasn't so mad and angry and upset. So I could talk to my mother after that. Thank you for teaching us meditation. So with good skill, meditation is really helpful. Otherwise, we have all these emotions, but we don't know how to deal with them. No one teaches us how to do this. With mindful, loving awareness, you learn how to hold all the different fears and emotions with compassion and how to steady yourself. And young people respond really well to this. We have a program called Mindfulness Daily, 15 minutes a day of training that has been adopted by many, many young people, and I want to offer it free to those who watch or listen for the Buddhist Television Network, and young people have found it very helpful.
Thank you.
Sure.
So in meditation, the way Korean people teach Zen meditation or Sun meditation is that we focus on the breath.
Yes.
But we tend to realize that when we start focusing on the breath, many other thoughts arises.
Yes.
So is it more beneficial to really focus on the breath or focus on being aware?
It's very simple. I mean, there are lots of good ways to meditate, and in San Huato meditation, breath is good. But it's not to become a good breather. The meditation on the breath is a way to develop awareness, and then as you start to become aware of the breath, you also notice all the other things, your thoughts and worries and hopes and love and joy, your emotions, your body things, all those become clearer to you because you're present. Then the mindfulness opens from the breath to be able to hold all of these things, and the neuroscientists call this expanding the window of tolerance, that you're able to be there for your tears and your joy and your hopes and your fears. All of those can be held in mindfulness, and that brings a kind of freedom. And then you begin to notice that all of it rises and passes like waves of the ocean. And so when you're afraid or when you're angry, or when you're very peaceful and you think, I always want to have it this way, you realize that in fact, everything changes. And then you become the field of awareness. You become the loving awareness that can allow all of this and still remain peaceful.
There are a lot of meditators who also focus on the breath, but they utilize various techniques. I think one of the main techniques that Sun meditationers use is body scan technique, where you focus on each part of your body and the sort of bodily feelings.
Yes.
And through that way, they tend to focus on the breath. How do you think of those kind of techniques as?
It can be a very good technique to build concentration or steadiness, so that's one thing. It can also show you, as you get deep in it, the impermanence of all things. Wherever you put your attention, instead of feeling the solid body, it starts to become a field of energy that you experience that's more alive and always changing. And you start to get the reality that things are impermanent, that they're selfless in a very deep way, and so insight and understanding comes. But focusing on the body isn't enough. You also have to focus on the heart and the mind. And so just as you can learn how to be with all the changes in the body with wisdom, you also need to learn how to be with all the emotions that arise and all the thought structures, the plans and memories and beliefs. And when you can hold all that in loving awareness and become the loving awareness, then a great freedom comes. Also, meditation, the question about whether meditation is just for yourself is a false question. The word for mindfulness in Pali, like Sanskrit, is sati, but it's usually a compound word, sati sampajanya, and it has two parts to it. One is mindful presence, and the other is mindful response. Just like breathing in and breathing out, we become centered, we quiet the mind and open ourselves to a sense of compassion and freedom, and then we get up, and in that same way, we respond to the world. And you can't separate the two. Our life is made of that. So in whatever way you are able to quiet your own mind and tend your heart and become a bit wiser and freer, then whether you're in school or in business or in your family or community or the things that you care about, you bring that spirit automatically with you and tend that in the same way that you tend your own body, because more and more you realize that they're not separate, that they're the same.
So in meditation, it's said that the more you practice it, the more skilled you become in meditation. Can you talk about the different levels of meditation and what you can achieve?
In the beginning, meditation can feel a bit difficult because the mind is unruly and we don't know how to deal with our emotions or with our bodily pain. It doesn't take so long, it might take some weeks, to learn to practice and be present for the different experiences of the body, the emotions, the thoughts, and already there's a benefit. When it gets deeper, there comes a sense of inner stillness and steadiness and an openness to vastness that grows, or concentration can become so still that when you focus on something, it pixelates, it shows itself to be made of energy and vibrations, and the whole body can become a field of vibration, or it can dissolve into light. The mind then can open and be filled with joy or bliss or delight or vast spaciousness. The heart can open to boundless compassion. And then beyond that, there comes the realization that who we are is consciousness itself, is awareness, that we are the awareness. And all of this is the play within consciousness of body and mind. And that freedom allows us to be in any circumstance and see the play of birth and death and joy and sorrow from the wisdom of the Buddha. All of that's possible.
So when you teach meditation in one of your teachings, how do you teach meditation to beginners, and how would you teach meditation to a little bit more skilled meditationer?
How do I teach beginners?
Yes.
In the beginning, I ask people to look into their own heart and mind and see what is their intention. And I'm always curious to that. Is it that they need to be peaceful? Is it that they're dealing with stress? Do they want to be more loving? Have they read about enlightenment and they're interested in enlightenment? Do they have friends who meditate and they want to discover? Because the motivation becomes interesting, and none of those are wrong. But when I understand the motivation of a person, then I can say, if you want more love, here's how you practice. You practice by starting with loving kindness wherever it's easy and then letting it expand for another. If you want to be more centered and present, then the way to do it is to begin to hold your body still and feel the breath that's moving, but use that breath to show you the waves that also arise of sensations, of feelings and thoughts. And I teach in a simple, systematic way that if you can begin to be aware of the breath, then also you can notice how thoughts or feelings or sounds come and go, and you become the space of awareness within which that happens. I also teach people how to return, because the attention wanders very often, and through practice you become better at coming back, and the sense of presence grows within your body, within your experience, and then the presence for another person.
Do you mind to share what you think is the difference between Hwadu, Korean sun meditation, and mindfulness meditation?
Hwadu practice, as I have done it with the Korean master that I studied with, and also with the Chinese master. With the Hwadu, it's almost like a very steep path. What am I? Who am I? You practice and ask again and again and again, and in doing so you inquire and you discover, who am I, in this very deep investigation. With mindfulness practice, it becomes more systematic. First, you become present in your body and mind, with your breath, with body sensations, with thoughts and feelings. And there comes a freedom in just being able to hold all of those and to know them as they arise and not be afraid of them. Then, with mindfulness practice, you start to see the process of life, that whatever arises comes and goes, it's impermanent, it's ungraspable, it's selfless, and there comes a sense of common humanity that we all share. Suffering, difficulty, joy, you start to see that it's not yours, but it's the very nature of human incarnation. Then, as mindfulness deepens, you shift your attention from the body and the feelings and the changing experiences back to the awareness itself. This is the next level of freedom. And you become, or you look in, and you turn your attention to awareness. What am I? What is this awareness? And you discover that what you are is awareness itself. That consciousness was born in this body and leaves this body, that all of it is actually made of consciousness. And then you can rest in loving awareness. You become what my teacher Ajahn Chah called the one who knows. You become the knowing. And this is then very much parallel to the Huato practice. But as you've done this, you've also learned how to work with body and emotions and thoughts, and discovered all these other ways that mindfulness can bring liberation, in addition to coming back to discover that who you are is awareness itself.
What MBSR and MSC is and how that relates to meditation?
So two of the most widespread practices of mindfulness in the US that have spread to clinics and hospitals and schools are MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and MSC, mindful self-compassion. And they are both very simple, systematic trainings in how to bring awareness to breath, to body, to feelings and thoughts. That's mindfulness-based stress reduction, taught by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And the beautiful thing about them is they're taught in a non-Buddhist way. They're taught in a secular way, because in its essence, the Buddha taught a science of mind. He didn't teach a belief system. He didn't say you must believe this or that. He said repeatedly, you must see for yourself. And if you look deeply, you can see the way you get caught and suffering and difficulty, and also the path to freedom through mindfulness and compassion. Mindfulness-based stress reduction teaches a systematic way to do this without referring to Buddhism at all. It's just our human nature to be able to pay attention and get free. MSC, mindful self-compassion, starts with the understanding that many people in the modern world judge themselves, have shame, have guilt, have bad feelings about themselves, and don't know what to do with that. And when you develop the sense of compassion for yourself as well as for others, the heart starts to open, you become freer, a greater sense of well-being and dignity grows. These are based on the Buddhist teachings of compassion, loving kindness, and mindfulness, but put in a secular form. And in a very brief way, with 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, you can begin to change yourself. So they're beautiful practices.
There's a lot of suffering in Korea and also in Korea, in America, and across the globe. Can you send a more heartful and hopeful message for all those suffering?
When you ask that question first, I have to let myself feel the suffering. I have to let myself feel the suffering of young people who are struggling to figure out how to make it in the society and who are also afraid about climate change. I have to feel the suffering of refugees. I have to feel the suffering of uncertainty or racism, all of these things. There's a great deal of suffering. At the same time, suffering is not the end of the story. Suffering is the first noble truth. And it has its causes. And as young people look, or we around the world, we can see the causes of greed, We can see the causes of hatred and anger. We can see the causes of ignorance and, of not seeing one another, not seeing interdependence, thinking that we're separate, which is a delusion. Because if we're all separate, then we don't care for this world. But in fact, every breath we take, another person breathes, other animals, the whales of the sea breathe it. It comes over the, Mongolian desert into the lungs of the people in Korea, and then it comes across the Pacific Ocean to us. It's all shared. When we see this, then there naturally comes a care because it's us, it's our family. And the beautiful thing is that the end of the story is that there is a kind of freedom and well-being, that we can develop it within ourselves, but also that we as human beings are survivors. Your ancestors and my ancestors going back thousands of years have survived really difficult things. And we have it in our DNA and we have it in our consciousness and spirit that not only can we survive, but we can take the difficulties, turn toward them, and learn to do them in a new way to make a better world for ourselves. And this is what we're called to do. We're called to actually step up and use our human capacities of awareness and compassion and understanding and change the world. And it's not too late at all to do this. In fact, we were born in this time and we are asked, can we take these difficulties and make something beautiful of them? And this is possible for us as human beings. The great modern task now is that of inner development. The outer technology that we have of biotechnology, nanotechnology, computers, internet, space technology, the fact that in my pocket I have the great Library of Alexandria and 10 million cat videos and everything else, all in this. Outer development, fantastic. Inner development, not very well done. As the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the American military said, we are a nation of nuclear giants and ethical infants. So now, no amount of outer development will stop war, will stop racism, will stop climate destruction, will stop tribalism, because those come from human heart. So the outer development now has to be matched by the inner development of humanity. This is our modern task. We must learn interdependence, compassion, listening to ourselves and one another, finding a freedom in ourselves. This is our human task. Nothing more important, nothing more beautiful. And the beautiful thing is that it's possible. And we celebrate this all around the world when we have the Nobel Prize winners of the world. These are people who've lived through great difficulty and brought out the best of humanity. We can do this.
And then lastly, can you give a message to the viewers of BTN?
The teachings of Buddhism are called the great medicine for humankind, the medicine that heals the body and heart and mind. We are so fortunate to have these teachings in this world, and I'm grateful that the Buddhist television network in Korea is supporting the Buddhist community and giving voice and place for these precious practices to be used in modern time. I hope to be able to visit Korea at some point together with the Buddhist television network in some fashion or other. And more than that, I celebrate what Buddhist television network is doing and the Buddhist community of Korea, because these gifts are what humanity needs at this time. We don't need more oil. We don't need more food. We don't need more technology. We need more love. We need more wisdom and understanding. And these are what's carried and that will make a wiser and more beautiful world and beautiful society. So I'm grateful for what Buddhist Television Network offers. And I feel that we share this now globally, this devotion to compassion and well-being and awakening that's central to the teachings of the Buddha, but more than that, are really part of our human heritage.
Thank you for your time today, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be able to do this.